like we might, here we go. Looks like we're recording.
And the YouTube's just about to go. We should get another notification, I think.
Like we might, here we go.
Good.
Looks like we're recording.
Okay, I think we're rolling.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting of the Salem Public Art Commission to order. Today is Wednesday, September 8th, 2021. We'll start with introductions. I'm Chris Darcy, Chair of the Commission.
Eileen Cotter-Howe, Commissioner.
Rachel Wojcik, Commissioner.
Michael was here, we lost him. I'm Heather Dimke with Public Works, and I know we have a couple guests joining us today. Kate, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Kate Van Emerson, the Executive Director of the Salem Public Library Foundation.
Good morning. I'm Ricardo Besserell with Compass Project Solutions, owner's representative for the City of Salem Public Works Operations Building.
Morning, everyone. Alan Dannon with Public Works Engineering.
And Michael, do you want to introduce yourself?
Michael Hernandez, Commissioner.
Perfect.
Great. Heather, was any public comment submitted?
Quickly, I did receive an email just last night from a gentleman I believe was intended for public comment. So if I can quickly, I'll just share it. It's some comments about the downtown potential for a mural. The gentleman's name was John Steiner. Per his email, I'll just share. As a Salem resident who often walks the streets and alleys of downtown, I would like to know the procedure for proposing a new mural in one of the alleys. There is an old faded and peeling mural depicting a country landscape in the alley leading north from Court Street between Whitlock's Vacuum and Sewing Store and shops to the west. I've traveled the world with a particular interest in taking photos of amazing and creative street art and believe there are locations in downtown Salem where innovative murals could enhance our central city. Recently attended a reception for the current exhibit of paintings by local artist John Colburn at the Bush Barn and believe that one of his images would not only honor a local artist, but could transform the faded alley wall into a handsome new public art piece. So sharing that email from Mr. Steiner, I did respond to him this morning with the public mural application packet, the guidelines and policies for the commission, and let him know to reach out with any further questions.
Great. Is the wall that he mentioned the wall that is opposite the pastoral landscape that is already on that block? And is there not one of the insects on the wall that he is mentioning?
I think there is an insect on that wall, and I think I was reading that, yeah, the country landscape mural, I presume that was the Jennifer Janicek, is it? Yeah. Pastoral mural that we repaired earlier this year that had graffiti, and it was noted at that time that unfortunately that maintenance, that mural does need a substantial, it looks like, amount of maintenance, so.
Mm-hmm.
It would be nice to hear what his thoughts are on location possibilities.
Yeah, well, we should definitely stay in touch with him. John Colburn, of course, is a very respected Salem artist. He just had a show at the Salem Art Association Bush Barn, with beautiful show. And he's older now, but produces very actively. So well, let's hope that we can continue the conversation around this.
That's good.
With any other public comment that came in?
That was all that I'd received.
Okay, let's move on to approval of the consent agenda, the agenda for today and the minutes of our August meeting.
Before we do that, could we add something to discussion items?
Yes.
I'd like to propose that we talk about the loan of the Anthony Ewer pastel and the Frederick Ballard Williams oil painting to Bush House Museum.
Okay. Sounds good. Anything else before someone makes a motion to approve the consent agenda? Looking for a motion.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All those in favor to approve the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Aye. All right, consent agenda is approved. Moving on to discussion items. And I'm glad that we have several guests as we move into the conversation about upcoming projects and the plans for the city's Public Works Operations Building. Who is going to tee this one off?
I think that's me, unless Heather, there's anything you want to throw in there.
Welcome, glad you're here.
Yeah, nice to see you all again. Thanks for having us. What we wanted to do this morning, Ricardo and I Ricardo from Compass Project Solutions, who's advising us with the Public Works Operations Project, is just give you all an overview of the upcoming building project at the City Shops Complex, and then talk a little bit about how we hope to integrate public art. We know there's a 0.5% requirement from the city code, and kind of building on our past successes with the police and library project to integrate art with this project. So I'm going to share a few screens with you all. Hopefully, I'm going to flip through a few different pictures. It's going to take a couple different screen shares. So hopefully this works. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to start, just in case, just give you a quick snapshot of where we are in the world here. So Mission Street running along here, kind of through the middle of the map on Google. And the City Shops Complex is in this area here, starting on 20th Street, kind of bounds it on the west, and it extends across 22nd Street all the way to 23rd. I'll zoom in just a little bit. This is the site for our new Public Works and Administration building here. So it's kind of on the eastern edge of the site, with access to the public coming off of 23rd Street, right past the Sandwich Express building. So just to give you a reference of where we are. I want to share a few things from the architect now, to just kind of give you an idea of the scope of the building. Okay, this is an older, one of the early design renderings of the building, but just to give you an idea of the shape, it's in 3 wings. It's about 50,000 square feet in 2 stories. And we're still working on material selections and that kind of thing, but this footprint is pretty well dialed in at this point. So north and south wing with a central wing where more of the public services are, and the main employee entrance here off of 23rd to the lobby. And then there's meeting spaces and other public areas off of this space. The main employee entrance comes from the other side of the building, with parking along the north, and the employees would access from the back side here.
Can I ask, what is the primary purpose of this building?
Great question. I kind of glossed over that. The intent here is, and if you're not familiar with the city shops, it's all very old, like 40s, 50s era Quonset huts and pole buildings and sheds. And we have, in 2019, the city completed a master plan to essentially redevelop and modernize the site. This is step 1 in that phase, and it would essentially replace the headquarters for operations for our Public Works Operations group. So that's streets, stormwater, water, wastewater, and other administrative functions that work in our current building 2 headquarters out here, along with our parks operations folks and recreation services folks would consolidate from both areas on site and City Hall. And we actually made a decision as we started to scope this project to bring the engineering division in as well, because engineering works quite often with public works operations, and that would get us out of leased space here at Salmon Run downtown and into this building that would be owned by the city. So primary function is really administrative management and day-to-day oversight of our daily operations for our public works crews going out and doing their work throughout the city.
But maybe just adding one thing to what Alan is saying, the other function is that there's a lot of utility crews that work in these departments. So what we've kindly referred to as we've been working on this project as muddy boot folks that will use this as their home base also at the start and at the end of their day. So their locker room facilities will be here. Their gathering places to muster in the mornings and set out on their path for their day as a crew will all start from this building.
Got it.
Yeah, that's right. Just going back, that's the folks coming in and out from the backside and keeping that separate from the public entrance where people can come in and access services, ask questions about getting their water turned on, or signing up for rec programs, reserving a park, that kind of thing. That can all happen right here in the new lobby, which our current space has like a lobby the size of maybe a couple phone booths. So a lot more friendly to visitors coming in and accessing public works.
Who is the architect?
The architect is, this is a design build project. So we're working with the same team that did the library. So Howard S. Wright is the contractor and Hacker Architects is the architect.
That's great. Wow.
This is the shot again from earlier in the design, looking at the building from 23rd towards that public entrance. And consistently throughout, you'll see the building is envisioned to be metal panels with metal roof, and then using wood accents on the inside and lots of glass. I'll show you an updated version of that here. So this is getting more into where we are today with landscaping and that kind of thing. And then I'm going to share one more screen. You see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So this is from our design meeting this week. So this is kind of up to date with where the design's at. So again, wood accents on the inside, metal panels on the outside with a lot of glass to provide natural light for the common workspaces. And you can also just see in this picture here that there's clear story windows on the north and south wings that allow more of that natural light to the interior. So in thinking about public art, well, first of all, Ricardo, do you want to give us a sense of what our construction budget is and what that 0.5% looks like for art?
Yeah, you bet. So the 0.5% for art works out to be $140,000, which is 0.5% of the total, which is roughly $28 million for construction cost on this project. So
a pretty healthy amount, fairly similar, a little bit less than what we had for police.
Mm-hmm.
So our thoughts, although there's certainly room for discussion, was that best opportunities to locate art with this project would be somewhere where most of the public can see it. And so this exterior entrance certainly offers opportunities for that. The picture that I have of the interior lobby is kind of focused outward, but you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like. And there definitely could be opportunities inside as well, I think, with the walls facing the lobby area, especially the one like that was, as you're looking out at this picture, the wall that would be behind us, I think could provide an opportunity as well. So there could be interior opportunities to provide art as well. You could.
This is the kind of project that might also lend itself to incorporated and functional items. Like I see that there's a bench in the front. There could be lighting fixtures. There could be floor inlays. I remember when we started talking about the police station, we brainstormed a number of different approaches, and we looked at, terrazzo floor inlays and other things like that. So it's a very handsome, it looks like a very handsome design solution to a building that will serve many practical needs.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited about it. I think, especially the folks that work in our current shops complex. It's kind of similar to our police project and our library project, where folks have been working in pretty antiquated surroundings for a long time. And so, I feel like the designers are hitting the mark in terms of providing a building that serves our needs, but also looks really nice. And I know Peter is, I think, happy with the way the design is trending as well.
That's great.
In terms of where we are in the process, and then maybe talking through a little bit of our process of working with the Art Commission, we are about halfway through the design development phase. So, like I said, footprint of the building and size of the building is kind of set. Where all the work groups are inside the building is pretty well cooked, although there's still some kind of shuffling going on to make everything fit in the right way. And we're starting to get into the details of how everything fits together. We have a plan to actually start some site work, hopefully in November, to get going on this. This site is going to be raised up a little bit to get out of the floodplain, so to get going on that fill work and then move into foundations. Building construction itself will start in early 2022, and completion is expected to be around summer of 2023. So in terms of getting an artist on board and starting to integrate with design, it's definitely not too soon. And I think if we want to explore, especially opportunities to integrate benches or other elements, those are the kind of things we'd want to talk through with the architect right away and see what they think are good opportunities there, so that we can include those options in an RFP to go out and recruit an artist.
It might be also interesting to for us to maybe bring to a group some examples of public art that's been successfully completed in buildings that have this type of a function. In the same way we looked at some examples of other police facilities around the country.
For sure.
Just to see what's out there.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing unless there's any other questions about look of the building or the site or anything like that.
Alan, I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can you explain again the orientation? What is the front of the building face? Is it facing 23rd? Or?
It is facing 23rd. Yeah.
Okay.
maybe that site plan, Alan.
Yeah. What's across the street from the building? Do you know?
I do. I'll go back to the aerial, and I think that'll show you the best. Hang tight, I got too many screens open.
We should share photos
There it
of
is.
the existing buildings.
Yeah, I can do that actually. So here's the site plan. So zooming in a little bit, our building goes right here where all these picnic tables were stacked when they took the aerial. And then access is right here on 23rd. So what's right across the street is
okay.
these apartments that were built not too long ago. And then there's some commercial in this area. Hawaiian time is what a lot of people are excited about being close to. So does that answer your question about in terms of orientation?
Yeah, now I have a better sense of the location.
Yeah. And then just kind of a little more big picture. Current building 2 that I referred to, like the headquarters where a lot of these folks are, is right here on the site. And building 14 where Parks is headquartered is right here.
Mhm.
A lot of employees, there's parking throughout the site. A lot of employees park here. So we would essentially bridge from that parking, create new parking along the north of the site, and then our building sits right there. So you can access from the employee side primarily from 22nd Street.
And what's, I don't know if the image that you have is static or not, but what's sort of below the apartments or south of there?
Yeah, so the apartments extend all the way down to Oxford Street, and then you get to there's kind of a mix in this neighborhood of residential and commercial, Duncan Construction down here, Cherry City Electric down here. So this neighborhood is, and then it kind of transitions to residential from there.
Yeah, okay.
There's and Peter has talked about this, there's some redevelopment that's starting to happen out here. The apartments are an example of that. And so he's excited, I know, about the opportunity to kind of tie into that with our new building and hopefully provide art in an area of the city where I don't think we have very much that folks could see.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions while I got site plan up or anything else?
I guess looking, so maybe forming a committee October, November would make sense.
I think so, yeah.
And maybe thinking about coming back to the October meeting of SPAC with some examples of public art that's been completed in facilities like this, just to get people thinking.
Yeah, that would be great. I think we could try to get our representatives from Howard S. Wright and Hacker to the next meeting to have that discussion. I think one thing we could be doing in the meantime, and I guess not to jump the gun, but it probably makes sense to talk a little bit about process here, because this project is a little different from the library and the police project in that it's not funded by a bond. So it does fall under pretty much the rules of the ordinance, where we turn over the required amount to the trust fund, and that is how it gets handled for this one, because it's just being funded from utility rate revenues. I was assuming, and you can tell me if this is a good assumption or not, that we would want to kind of operate in the same way that we did before, where the city, especially with the library, where the city puts together an RFP and we work with you all to finalize the content there. And then we would contract directly with the artist like we did with the library. I feel like that was more, it was more straightforward than when we contracted through CB2 and the contractor on the police station. And I know Ricardo had to help us work through that, some of the difficulties there. I feel like it went a little smoother on the library. But anyway, I digress. I was assuming that you would want city staff to take the lead on the RFP and work with you all to get that out.
Yeah, I would assume that.
Okay.
Does any other SPAC members feel otherwise?
Sorry, my dog is barking, but I do have a comment. Hopefully he'll stop in a sec. One thought about that, because I did have a conversation with Amanda at the library recently, and she did comment that being able to coordinate with the contractor would have been useful for her, because she ended up having to, they had some of the machinery that was on site for use, and then she had to, I think, rent separate machinery, and because she couldn't use what they had because of liability and insurance and things like that. So I don't know if there's a way to coordinate some of those things when it comes time, depending on what the artwork is, obviously, for installation, so that we're not essentially, paying twice for something And I think she was referring specifically to, what are those things, like cherry
Scissor
lifts?
lifts, yeah.
Scissor lifts, that's
Yeah.
it. And maybe a few other things that were redundant. And so just in the interest of efficiency, if there's a way to do that, I don't know. But maybe if it's all separate, that's not possible.
Okay, yeah, thanks for passing that on. I do know that coordination there was a delicate dance with trying to get art installed at the right time with everything else being done. So that's a very very good point, and something that we can certainly work with Howard is right on the right ways to make sure we coordinate that as best we can.
Okay.
Especially, you know, and it depends on what the artwork is, but
Right.
Yeah, that will make a difference.
I've got one quick comment just with regard to Alan's statement about depending upon what the artwork is. If it is going to be an integrated art into the design, right now to maintain our design schedule, the design team is going in for permits on the 100% set of documents towards the tail end of January of 2022. So if we want to kind of have that cleanly be an open item that could integrate well into the design process, we'd want to be ahead of that a little bit.
Sure. I think that's doable if we come back to our meeting next month with just some sort of inspirational examples to get some conversation going, and then identify a committee shortly thereafter, and then, you know, convene that group for moving whatever ideas are appropriate forward.
that sounds
This is exciting. Yeah, it looks like a fun project. And I'm, you know, again, knowing how the change, the change to a new facility, what that meant for the police, I can only imagine for these other guys who are out in the weather and on the streets and everything in the parks.
I had one comment about the that front interior, the landscaping that right in front of the front entry. You know, it's so regarding Ricardo, your comments about 100% of the design. Does that include that structure, the way that that landscaping is kind of being presented? Or is that are those elements of the front landscape or the concrete where there's a bench? Is that more in flux than the structure?
As far as completing the construction set of documents, the completion of the documents would happen in January, but certainly there's more flexibility in changing things outside of the building later on than there is inside the building.
Yeah, because I just noted there was a couple trees, just the way it was divided, the pathways, if that was something. Well, we can present ideas for that versus integration into the interior lobby or whatever we want to entry corridor there. You know, once you put a big tree, then, you know, as far as something that was more sculptural, something that's where my comments are coming from. Okay. Is that that looked like, just given there being a lack of public art in that area, that driving by, I mean, obviously it's one option, it's one path to note that could be a great something right there in the front.
Mm-hmm.
So. Is there a landscape architect involved, or is Hacker doing that?
There's a landscape architect involved. They're called Ground Workshop.
Okay. And are they in Portland?
They are.
Okay.
Did they do some of the master planning for one of the parks?
I don't
like Riverfront. I can't remember the name of the group that was involved with that.
I don't think that was those guys. The only time I've worked with them is actually they worked for Hacker on the library project.
Oh, well, it looks like that landscaping is going to be very nice. I just drove by yesterday.
Yeah, I've been impressed with their work, and yeah, they did a nice job of providing those vines that are gonna grow up along the shear walls and give us a little, relieve a little bit of the harshness of all that concrete. So
Yeah, and the redesign and planting of the entryway closest to the garage is a huge improvement.
yeah, that was a
Very
massive,
nice.
massive win for that project.
Cool. All right, is there any more discussion for this morning on this topic?
So just to make sure, so I think the takeaway for us is to get on the schedule for October with our with members of our team, and we can kind of talk through what the opportunities are. It sounds like you all will bring some examples to help show them what's possible, and I think their juices will probably get flowing between now and then too. So that'll be a good discussion. In the meantime, we can also, I think, on the sort of more admin side, at least start getting an RFP drafted up and then plug in the results of that discussion so it's ready to go as soon after as possible.
That sounds good. And I think that we as members of SPAC can also bring examples of, kind of thought-provoking public utility, works types of public art projects.
Awesome.
For that conversation.
Sounds good.
And
All
I
right.
think I'll just add quickly, I think it was the final RFQ, request for qualifications, that was used for the library. I think I remember working through some of the details. There were questions about how that was drafted. I think where we ended, folks were pretty happy. I don't know if that could be used as kind of a template yet again as we move forward.
That's exactly what I was thinking, Heather, as we
Awesome.
take that document,
Mhm.
use it as a starting point. So if anybody has any recollections of things about that document that they didn't like, let me know and we can try to correct those this time around.
That sounds good.
Thanks for the opportunity to talk about this today. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for both being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great morning.
All right, thanks.
Bye.
All right, let's move on to the library. And boy, super exciting. Heather, do you want to start this?
Sure. Welcome, Paula. Thank you for joining. Okay, so library, let me find my notes. So hopefully everybody in this group has heard that the opening has been postponed, unfortunately. It was the day before opening that, given the COVID numbers, a decision was announced to go ahead and postpone opening. So that announcement has been shared. It's on our website. I understand the library has now resumed curbside service. So they're all set up and offering that. I've not heard any new or anticipated dates for reopening at this point. And I don't know, Kate, thank you for joining. If you have any updates that I don't have, feel free to jump in.
No, that's what I know also.
Okay. So there it stands. The library is pretty much already beautiful, ready to go. Artwork's in. We did do a couple of different news stories last month. We focused, the first one was kind of on the return of all artworks to the library. And so we finished that story and that was sent out on Friday, August 27th, I believe it was. So we sent that just through the typical means that we do our news releases. That's through the city's flash alert, which is local media. That was posted on the city's website, and then it was also shared via social media. So that went out. I know at our last meeting, there was a number of other ideas from regional kind of news outlets to for our second story, which focuses on Amanda and her artwork, potentially to her universities and such. So if there's a list of other folks that we want to share, at least that first one that has been finished, I'm happy to share that news story along to others. We are finalizing the second news story, which was focused on Amanda Wojcik's new Percent for Public Art piece, as well as the exhibition that's now in place and ready to go once the doors open. So that release was forwarded actually to Amanda to get her edits, feedback, and she did return just a couple small edits, it looked like, just last night. So I think that piece, I can send that back out, Rachel, Chris, to you if you'd like to see that once more. And then I think you took some updated photos of the new piece that we could attach. So I think that story is ready to go shortly, whenever we decide, given the postponed opening. I'm not sure if we have a preference on whether we want to hold off on that a bit, or go ahead and send that out.
I think we should maybe hold off a bit. I only saw one pickup of the first release that ran on Sunday, August 29th. It was basically in the brief section. They pulled a couple paragraphs from the release with no image. So I think if we spend a little bit more time focusing at least on some arts media outlets, we might have just better success or better coverage. I'm just not sensing that the Statesman is doing a lot on any front. I think they just don't have a lot of people. It's funny, when I drove past the library yesterday, it reminded me that we might reach out to Wendy Brokow at CC Media and try to have her do a story about the library art. I think it would be good if she spoke with Eileen and Paula about the reinstallation of the collection and the repositioning of the birds. She might be able to pull from footage that Trevor shot of his interview with Amanda. We've got good still shots. I mean, the building looks beautiful. The art looks wonderful. And thank you so much, Eileen and Paula and Rachel, for working on that. Not sure what the timeline is for the labels going in. I know that, there's of course a lot of going back and forth, proofing and getting all that squared away. So, figuring out the timing. I don't see that there is a huge rush with the Amanda Wojcik release, but I'd rather take the extra time and be very thoughtful about where we can actually get a story placed that's good. I know the architecture writer Brian Libby just had a piece come out this morning about the Pat Reeser Center for the Arts in Beaverton. He would be a good guy to get down to Salem to do a piece about the library building, Hacker, and the art collection. I think that's very doable. But anyway, I will say that I think the outcome of the public art process and repositioning of the collection and the Betty LeDuc gift, it's real. Thank you all. You did an amazing job to get it all done.
Would you like me to forward the existing story that we have onto Mr. Libby and see if he has an interest in additional?
I think the existing story, because it doesn't even mention Hacker Architects, I'd wait till we have the Wojcik release.
Okay.
And I think we should specifically, Hacker Architects ought to be at least mentioned in the release so that the design writers' curiosity is piqued. Jeff Yon has a blog in Portland called Port. We can get him to come down and do something. And I know Rachel will have other ideas because this is her specialty. And I hope that Travel Salem will do something beyond just running a prepared release.
Okay, well, I will forward the edits back from Amanda on that story, and I'll forward that back to you for final edits. And if you have a list, if you want me to forward on, just let me know. Or if you'd like to share, let me know, and we'll include the architects and anything else.
I think it would be good to try to, if we can collectively create a list as we move forward with projects and talk about other things happening with public art in Salem. If we can put together a media list that is good, then we have it for future use.
That would help me.
Can we start just a Google Doc that
Mm-hmm.
collectively we can add some names to, and then Heather, you can take that and save it however makes sense for your records.
Yeah.
So like an Excel spreadsheet that we can add to.
Yeah, I think that would be good. Flash news Flash News does us, it gets you to a certain place, but it doesn't necessarily get you to the right writer at the right publication, you know, who has that beat.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I mean, Heather said right now there's no plan for reopening. The original public opening was going to be this September 25th. So I guess nothing would happen prior to that. Likely.
25th has also been canceled.
Okay, great. Good to know, Kate. It's not on our formal agenda, but I guess it's obvious that the Peace Plaza has been cleaned up. There will be new landscaping, at least on the library side of that public space. All the weeds around the sculpture are gone. You know, the space, it looks dated, but it's definitely tidy and looks a lot better. So I guess looking forward to the fall, I know there was a little bit of conversation about whether the city had funds to do more in the Peace Plaza space. And then one of our former agenda items was looking at the mural that's closest to the library side of that east end of the Peace Plaza. So we can look forward to talking about that later on.
That's great. I add too, because I drive by every day to go to work. The bannering that's up there.
Oh yeah.
That has peace signs, and it's super dated. I mean, I'm not trying to. I mean, given the upgrade that Hacker's done and everything, and like you're saying, it's kind of cleaned up. Yeah, they look a little dated. I don't know. It's the same subject. Is there any funds to improve the graphics or things like that?
So I had reached out to ask about, I know we were talking at one point about the fountain, and I haven't heard anymore. I'm going to try to reach out to engineering again to see if we finally got that estimate of what it's going to take to repair that piece, and if there might be funds. So I'll keep asking about that. I don't know the history. I'll add that to my list of the banners. I'm not aware of any funds that are just kind of any funding available for that area in general. Later on in the meeting today, there are some talks just getting started about a 50-year celebration for next year. And I think as part of that, they're going to be looking at some activities primarily focused in Peace Plaza. So there might be some funds available soon, but I haven't heard anything just yet. The banners, I don't know if those were potentially a gift item from another city or from someone. So, but I've added that to my to-do list to check in on that as well.
Great. Anything else on the library that we want to focus on this morning? And anything else that we should know about the library from you, Kate?
Well, Rachel and Jonathan hung the Amanda Wojcik exhibit a couple weeks ago. Thank you very much for that. I haven't seen it yet, just because I'm trying to stay out of everyone's hair as much as I can. And so that's in place. So I feel really lucky that we had the window that we had to get all of the art installed, including that exhibit. And so we're just kind of in a holding pattern until decisions are made. And I'm also find myself kind of grateful that we had planned on having the Amanda exhibit up as long as we did. Mm-hmm. When we made those plans, it felt like a little bit long, but now with this, not being able to be in there, I think that the timing will hopefully be good for that also. So no, nothing else on my end. Where we'll have volunteers that are willing to help with the labels when those are completed and applying them. And then beyond that, I think we're done, it's just been such a massive project, and it feels really nice to be on this end of it, especially when it looks so great.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the Amanda Wojcik exhibit. It looks wonderful. When you are interacting with art over Zoom for a year and a half, your senses, I think, become dulled. And when I saw the process drawings and paintings and collages that Amanda, that were kind of the inspiration leading up to her larger work, it was like having a giant, ice cream sundae in front of you. The detailing is beautiful. The framing is beautiful. I think the space lends itself very nicely to an exhibition of that scale. Rachel and Jonathan, I think, did a really nice job hanging it. The typography looks good. The text looks great. I think it is a wonderful launch of that the look, the feel, the professionalism, the presentation. It sets the tone for what that space should be used for in a library of the kind that we have. It's so I hope the library can open soon, because I think people will be really amazed with the project overall. Amazed.
I do have a few pictures if anyone's interested.
Oh, let's show them, because
I
I already
wanna-
have some on my phone.
Can I share?
Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
Okay, I didn't know.
I think those collages are just incredible.
They're really, the detail is just kind
Both
of,
the black and white, and then I really like
Wait
the
a
one with the
second.
green in it.
I might be in the wrong, hold on, there we go.
And the
Okay.
framing's beautiful.
Mhm.
So the one thing, I'll show you the pictures first. And the one on the left there, I think, is called Waterfall Salem, and that one relates specifically to the larger piece. Oh, whoops, sorry, I got trigger happy there. I think I might have skipped a couple, sorry.
Still seeing the first.
Yeah, I'm
Oh, you
seeing just
are.
one
Oh,
image.
okay. Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can. I might need to go back. Sorry about that.
This is what I do every time.
Oops. Okay, let's try this again. Because I think when I first started, it was not. Okay, let's try that. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna try to scroll through these images. Maybe that's the problem. Is that a new image?
Yep.
Oh, good. Okay, now it's working.
There's the concrete wall. Yeah.
Hmm.
This is moving down from the auditorium end down to the lobby and the big space end.
Yes, and then this is the wall that's right next to the Friends
Mhm.
shop.
Yeah.
Another view of the. So we decided to put the name information at the other end closest to the auditorium, because you can see the signage that's permanent there.
Oh,
Pointing
to
to,
separate it from that. I get it now.
yeah, because it was too much text
Mhm.
in one place. And then this is the wall that is adjacent to the entrance to the auditorium.
It is hard to photograph in that space, because
Yeah, I didn't do a long.
I just had trouble getting a good shot.
Mhm.
But
That looks
it
great, Rachel.
looks great.
Amazing.
So one thing that I was just going to mention is that the lights in there are a little tough, because they are well, I'm not sure if it's that the bulbs, the kind of bulbs that are being used, they're really bright and they're close to the wall. So to make it so that they're not just like super hot
That make them look like
spot.
little spots. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one thing that's a little tricky. So we did end up taking one of the lights down and doing some, I don't know, mumbo jumbo to kind of like diffuse the light a little bit. And then the wall that's adjacent to the Friends Library doesn't have a light. There's no lighting for that wall. There is just the cans that are up in the ceiling that do rotate, but not, they only go back and forth this way. They don't go this way. So you can't wash the wall with those lights. So we took a light from the other side and aimed it that way. So anyhow, it might be worth seeing if there's a way to get you know, a track light on the other side, because right now there isn't one.
If you are going to do that, you should also look at the section up, let's see, it's by the bathrooms up on the third floor. It has the same problem. We were going to use that section to put a few pieces on, but we were having so much trouble with the cans and aiming the light that we decided not to. And so it's a fairly dark corridor. And we just left it and moved to another spot.
Yeah.
That's the kind of hallway up on top, right along the railing. Okay, shoot.
Yeah, and I don't know, as far as the track lighting, what type of light bulbs are in there, but you know, maybe just adjusting the brightness of those lights can help a little too.
We talked about having both spots and floods, and that we could change them out interchangeably. And I think that would be the best thing for the corridor, to have a selection of both.
The issue with that corridor too is that the lights are so close to the wall.
Yeah.
That you can only get the spot like 1.5 feet, maybe 2 feet up the wall, and that's it. So it doesn't get up high enough to hit, 60 inches.
Yeah, I think what we ended up doing was pointing, the one, doing them more from multiple directions to, you can't really tell in the photographs because the photographs pick up all the light. But anyhow, I think overall it turned out okay.
Good
but
job.
It is tricky lighting.
Yeah, you did a very good job.
And the artwork around the library looks great. I spent some time while we were in there installing that, wandering around, looking at everything that Paula and Eileen had done to get those pieces in place. And I thought everything looked great. I don't think it was lit yet when I was there. Maybe it was, but the lights may not have been turned on everywhere because the library, the workers were around. Anyhow, yeah, it looks great. Everything does. So.
And I've heard that feedback echoed from a couple different librarians, and that Sarah, the lead librarian for the library. So very happy, I know, with how it looks.
Very good.
I would like to try, once things are open, I would like to try to do just maybe a walkthrough for arts people. With Eileen part of it, and to just talk about the reinstall, how the Betty LeDuc gift came to be, how the Amanda Wojcik piece came to be. And it would be more a gesture of, friendship, community building, and pulling the arts community together, because we haven't had really any ways to be in the same place at the same time other than by this type of process, which is not quite the same. All right, is there any more discussion on the library?
I might bring up just quickly, we are still finalizing the labels. I think they're about done. I did learn, and I shared with Eileen and Rachel last week, we had assumed, and I think we were told at one point that those were going to be part of the construction budget. And it sounds like that's not the case, unfortunately, here at the end. So it sounds like that will be coming out of the art fund. The last estimate that we received, and that included, I believe, Don's time for the formatting from Felt Hat. The estimate came from his printer, Premier, up in Portland. It was about $1685 for 97 labels. So we're just starting to regroup and look at that and see what our options might be. I think they're pretty close to being ready to print. So we just need to, I think, have an additional conversation with Don about our options. So
Now, what I was a little confused about that, Heather, is the printing that he said that was not part of that. That's to be added to the 1685.
the estimate that I got was from Premier. So it was that, I believe it was for printing everything. And I think that somehow includes his time, right, for the final formatting, because they sent that back to him to work on. To finish. So I'm not sure how that's factored in, but the total, my understanding was that 1,600 for printing plus the work that he's done to finalize everything.
Okay.
Did you get estimates from other printers?
I've not, and that question came up, and I think I can, but again, I don't know. I presume we need to pay Don for his time. Doing the formatting.
Just because I know I've worked with Premiere for decades, and they're on the high end.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I mean, they do great work. The reason why you go to them is because you guaranteed it's going to be great quality. But they are, just note that I don't know what the policy for 3 bids or.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to slow it down. I'm just making a general comment that they are very reliable, very high quality, but they're on the high end. So.
Right. And in Salem, because I did a lot of printing in my former job, and I bid everything. Lynx is printing in Salem's also very, very high quality, and Select Impressions in Salem is very high quality.
Exactly. So I was going to say, I mean, had I known, I missed a meeting, so apologies, but if this was brought up in detail, but yeah, I would have had Select Impressions look at that to see if they could beat the price and
and if it is very tightly spec'd, they'll meet whatever you need.
Yeah,
they'll deliver.
And again, I'm not trying to slow it down. It's just the intent to try to keep it local too. And Select Impressions, I'm super confident with them as well. But if you've already spent design time, that doesn't make sense to maybe switch it up. But maybe
Rachel had mentioned that too, was that would be a good thing to move to a more local business. And going forward, we definitely want to do that.
I was just wondering, Heather, can you ask Dawn to break out, just so that we know exactly like what the printing estimate is, and then what his design cost is, because I didn't get the sense that it included everything, although I only saw, I think, the other estimates that were for the
sleeves, the first batch.
Right, yeah.
Right.
So, and then that was all when we thought it was being batched together. So, yeah. Because I mean, I would imagine that obviously we're going to be paying him no matter where it's printed, unless he's billing his time as part of the other project.
Yeah. I hope to give him a call today.
Okay.
And why was it not going to be paid for through the library project, Heather?
Well, I'd have to look back. Apparently nobody put a bid in early on, and I don't know how that was missed. You know, when I stepped in, we were being asked for information, and so I kind of presume, because we hadn't reached out, that that was part of that effort. They were also working on the labeling for the library. Let me see. I think they just, Premier did not provide an estimate early on because there wasn't any information on how many labels or what indeed we'd be looking at, is what he'd said. And that was somehow missed along the way.
And then since about half of the art is foundation art, I think it's appropriate for us to split that cost similar to the way we split the storage.
Great,
To split the label cost.
great.
Thank you,
Well,
Kate.
let's figure out
Yeah.
what Don's fee is and then what the specs are for the actual printing, and if there is an opportunity to at least get one or two other bids. I think that would make sense.
Okay.
Okay. Echo Earth. We had a good meeting with the Salem Parks
Thank you.
Foundation on September 2nd. They like to hold their meetings in parks, so we met in Bush Park at a picnic table. It's very pleasant, and it's amazing to see how well used that park is. Heather, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, gosh, I don't have a whole lot to say. Chris and I attended the meeting with the board, as she mentioned. The Eco Earth is one of their project proposals. So they had some time set aside to ask questions, which they asked a few. And I was glad, actually, Jennifer Keller from Parks, who works quite frequently with the city CIP, Capital Improvement Plan. They were asking, they had a couple questions, I think, about why this project is not yet included in the city's 5-year CIP plan, which includes projects over 50,000. And it sounds like we just really have to start those conversations to get them on the books. They had other questions about whether or not urban renewal funds would be an option for the Eco Earth. I knew that I'd reached out and had learned otherwise. So I looked back, I couldn't remember the discussion that I had, but I looked back through my emails and was told that maintenance projects do not qualify for urban renewal funds. So unfortunately, that's not an option. And then they had a couple other questions about the Rotary Amphitheater, I think. It sounded like we left before I think they were going to deliberate further that evening. They were forming an exploratory committee, it sounded like, to kind of talk about this project. It is quite big compared to what they've usually fundraised for. I've not yet, I looked through, I probably left that evening, we headed out of town, and I just got through my emails this morning. I've not seen anything else come back in just yet.
I think I got the feeling that the group was generally interested in taking on the fundraising for this. There was one person who definitely expressed that she was not supportive. They had, before we went to the meeting, it was suggested that we leave before they did their deliberations at the end of the meeting. So we basically, we had longer discussion than their agenda called for, but it was, they asked a lot of good questions, and clearly they are familiar with some of the city's budgeting processes and getting things in queues and conversations with the city council. So I left feeling, I felt good about things. I haven't reached out to Carol to actually thank her for inviting us, which I'll try to do today. Carol Snyder, and she's the board president. One of their board members did ask about some corporate support for the amphitheater, and I thought he was asking about the Rotary Amphitheater, but I happened to be in the park yesterday because I took my son to see the new the amphitheater, and I passed a plaque that I had never seen before. It's probably 8.5 by 11 cast bronze, and apparently when the first amphitheater, the one that is just grass, it uncovered closest to the river, when that was built, both PGE and Northwest Natural made large gifts. And I don't know whether that was for infrastructure or cleanup, because the plaque refers to the fact that that Riverfront Park site was very much an industrial site in the early days of Salem. So it'd be worth going back and looking at that. But that I had never seen that before, and I thought that Dan Sosi was referring to the new amphitheater and not the original one. Anyway, I guess I was in the park yesterday. I walked around the ball. There were parents taking pictures of their children in front of the earth ball. There were people walking by on bicycles. The landscaping looks fabulous. The park was active but not overcrowded. You could see that the grass is being watered. It was green. The park looked super well maintained. And I just hope I hope this conversation with the Parks Foundation develops into a collaborative effort to get the money to repair the earth ball. Because one member who's quite positive said, well, it either will need to be repaired or maybe it will need to be removed. And I thought, that to me really, that should not be an option unless there's nothing optimistic on the horizon.
So are they, just to clarify, are they planning then to make a decision about whether they would convene a fundraising committee and start a campaign?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And yes. And a number of their board members will serve on that committee.
Mhm.
Heather and I said we would provide any assistance.
Mhm.
Prior to that meeting, I also put together a list of what I thought were viable grant applications with a timeline. And, some funding programs within state government are only open once every 2 years. So, if you miss a cycle, you can't put in a proposal for a while.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I'm optimistic. And I do think we also need we need another conversation, maybe face-to-face, Heather, with Kimberly Fitzgerald, because I see this as a heritage site as well as a community arts site. And I will do whatever I can do to help to prepare any documents that would help get this designated as something of historical importance in Salem or Oregon. We've got enough info from we have enough background from the Mary Heinzman and her group. And I don't know. Again, if there's a heritage funding deadline in October, which I don't think we could make. And then it's another 2 years. So, but we'll see. On the plus side, I think we're doing everything we can. We've got the report. We have an estimate. A professional conservator was involved. A nonprofit group came to us and said, hey, we might be interested in your project. And now we're in conversation with them.
Did they give you any sense, Chris, of how long it will take to come to a decision?
I don't, but I mentioned to Heather as we were leaving the park that the fellow on the Parks Foundation board who suggested to them that they think big was not in attendance at that meeting. Ron Kellerman is his name. He was a recently retired financial planner. His office was in the building with you, Michael. Nice guy. His daughter was in my son's class at South Salem High School. So we didn't have the kind of a big thinker voice at that table, but I don't know, Heather or I could just send a message to Carol and say, hi, hope you had a good weekend. What's anything we should know? And then let her know the date of our next meeting. Or, yeah.
Yeah, I can do that today.
Okay, great. It's,
I think-
it's like one step at a time. The good news is I think we're doing something every month on the Echo Earth Ball. So for the people who say nothing's happening, we can point to, there's conversation, there's further study, And I don't know what else to do. I don't have a wand that I can wave yet. Okay, moving on.
Rachel, did you have something you were going to say?
I was just gonna say there's a lot of different opportunities for fundraising for this project, and now with the new amphitheater, which I don't know when they're going to actually start using it, but I would imagine that will bring more and more people to the area. Even just having some signage with maybe a QR code that people can scan to get more information about supporting the repair or renovation, whatever we want to call it, rejuvenation of the globe. Maybe we can set up a landing page once we know what's happening and people can make a donation. It just seems like there are opportunities to create some, like a mini wave of momentum. And I know that, I mean, in traditional fundraising, you start from the top with the big lead gifts, but maybe this project, since it's like a more of a broader interest in a sense. I mean, it's like the interest in this globe is more widespread throughout the community, that maybe the tidal wave has to start with the smaller gifts to then build momentum to get the community leaders and the people who have the capacity to make larger gifts to see that there is a public interest in, fixing it, and that it has meaning in the community, to sort of then bring those folks along. And so I don't know, maybe in a way it's sort of like a reverse capital campaign. I don't know. Because every time I'm down there, I see people, with their kids looking and lingering, and it just seems like a lost opportunity in a way to kind of create some kind of community momentum.
I agree. Oh, go ahead, Michael.
Oh yeah, no, I like that a lot. I like the reverse part of it, because as soon as you start, then it might take a while, but I like that a lot. And then your comment about the amphitheater, once that's activated with events and programming, then I can already imagine there's like a booth, right? There's like a little canopy booth type thing set up, just telling people about information about it. Because then you're gonna have an audience. It's just gonna be walking in an entrance, and you can't miss it. Like, it would be so easy just to start to build that into, like, every time you go to the event, you hear more about where that's at, and fundraising opportunities to volunteer to be part of it, to help try to build some sort of following around it, and not just, again, it's just starting somewhere. And then, yeah, once there's events there, just seems like a layup that you would find stuff out about it, and people could be there to tell you about it.
Or even a benefit concert of some kind.
Yeah, so I was going to say the same thing, but exactly, like donating. I mean, the city's responsible for managing the programming, right, Heather? So, I mean, it's built in that any negotiation would be, would you donate, I don't know, a small amount to performances, or even doing some sort of events where it's geared around, it's clearly called out that this is in benefit of the Eco Earth Ball fundraising or something. And for that matter, whatever, that there might be performances that they think it's great that they want to donate a bigger sum, so.
Well, there are lots of good ideas. I like the idea of once we have another conversation with the Parks Foundation people, putting together some online presence for this that would have a QR code displayed at the ball site.
Yeah.
So that something that could be updated regularly. Yeah, I think it might be good to have a conversation between SPAC and whatever committee they form to to talk about some of these ideas. I mean, you could have a lot of fun with this in a variety of languages and in a variety of formats. And yeah, and remember, I mean, hundreds of people donated like $100 or $250 to sponsor an animal or a country. And, you know, there was a lot of sort of pride in people's ancestry or their love of a particular species or continent that actually helped them get the money together to do it in the first place.
Because it is a community effort. I mean,
Oh,
the
yeah.
last time around was a community effort. Rachel's absolutely right. It's a broad spectrum of people that respond to this globe. And I was just thinking that every time that I come up Parkway, come back to Salem, I passed by the United Way. And there's that thermometer that they have there all the time. And I always just kind of glance over to see where it's at. Something like that that's very visible could also be placed there. And really, there's no reason not to start right away
Absolutely.
with the community fundraising. And of course, we're going to have grants and the like, and have the Parks Foundation board be part of it too later if that's what they need to do. But we actually could start fundraising right now with the community.
Well, let's have the conversation with the Parks Foundation. What they do offer is a vessel where money can be deposited, so it doesn't have to come
Okay.
in it. So it doesn't go into still exists on paper, but really has not a lot of capacity. That would be the Echo Earth itself, the nonprofit. Or there's not enough incentive for people to give money directly to the city. That's a less attractive vessel to place gifts.
I mean, maybe at the beginning it could be seeded with gifts from maybe something from the Parks Foundation, something from SPAC, something maybe from OASF, or other organizations that maybe Travel Salem, you know, and I'm talking about more of, you know, I'm mentioning all of these groups that don't really have budgets, very large budgets anyways, maybe a little bit of seed from a special allocation from the mayor or something like that, so that it creates sort of a good faith bit of momentum to generate then community support at the individual level, and then bring in the grants and the bigger donor.
Well, there are two applications, not to get into the weeds here, but the Marion County Cultural Development Corp has a deadline coming up. That would be another group, you know, for a few $1,000s. The Oregon Community Foundation Small Arts and Culture Grants, you can ask for up to $5,000 in that program. That's coming up. But yeah, I mean, I'll share the list of funding opportunities that I shared following this meeting. I'll send that out for folks. And then I just think it would be important Heather's going to reach out to Carol Snyder, and we should just, you know, if their answer is we can't take it on, then it needs to come back to SPAC, and we need to start, you know, either putting together a working group plus a leadership group, you know, but we need to have a conversation about that. And then, I mean, the good thing is the Echo Earth as a nonprofit does still exist. It's pretty inactive, but they are active on paper with the state and the corporations division, and they're doable for a vessel. Okay, I'm mindful of the time because we're now almost at 11. Could,
Paula, you had your hand up a little bit ago. Or did that get addressed?
So
I can't see Paul.
I on Saturday morning, I walked from Minto near my house to downtown, and I've never done that before. I'm kind of embarrassed to say. I could not believe how many people were on that path walking into downtown, and every single person seemed to like get to the park and then go around the Eco Earth Ball, you know, before they came back to go into Minto. Maybe it was just kind of shock because I'm not used to seeing that many people in one place, but it was packed. Yeah, and beautiful. And coming from Minto on to that park and downtown in the background is just, it's spectacular. Yeah.
You know,
Anyway.
I had the same reaction yesterday. My 35-year-old son was with me, and he hadn't been to Salem in almost 2 years. And I've got to say, the park was so beautifully maintained. It was about 5 o'clock. The grass was green. There were all kinds of people, power walking, cycling, kids on swings, strollers. Yeah, I mean, I think all the work that's gone into that development, we're seeing it. And now there's going to be new construction at the corner of, what is it, Trade and Commercial, when that corner block of the Boise Cascade site is developed. So, yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we'll have a thumbs up from the parks people. Otherwise, this will be a big agenda item in October.
Heather, can I ask quickly, what is the plan for the grass amphitheater?
I think they're just planning to leave that as another option for folks that want a smaller venue.
Yeah, or a different venue.
Yeah, or different venue. So last I'd heard as well, so they were planning to start permitting the amphitheater in October. I don't know if any of that's changed or may change soon with everything else that's going on. But events were scheduled to start in October. And the city was actually, we're responsible for maintaining, managing the events, but I think we were looking at a couple of different options, one that included maybe having vendor assistance or whatnot, because that's going to be a big resource need for staff time, whatnot. So I think we are still looking at a couple different options on how that would be managed.
I think I heard that there was an RFP out,
right,
for someone to take on that management role. So yeah, I think that would be a good route to go to just get the work handled, because there'd be a lot of details.
Are they going to, like, you can't have one event going on at one place and like dueling concerts, like right next to each other?
That seems like an obvious question. Like, no.
Well, I don't know though. I mean, no.
Events are quite loud. I can hear music at my house when there is live music in Riverfront Park.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine that they would book 2 concerts in close proximity on the same night. Someone would want their money back.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of fun, let's segue to the Civic Center 50-year celebration.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to share on this, but just I guess getting the conversation started. City Manager's Office is looking at, next year will be 50 years for the Civic Center. So they're looking at doing some kind of celebration. I think it would be centered in the Peace Plaza, as I mentioned earlier. I think next August is the target date. And I'd had some notes. They were just getting started, some folks, to talk about what this might look like. I guess the official dedication of City Hall took place August 18th, 1972. So they're looking to do some kind of small evening, late afternoon event, August of 2022, next August. As part of this process, I think they're going to be bringing in a number of folks. Kimberly Fitzgerald, our historian, is obviously, I think they're looking at some kind of interpretive panels, but they were also curious about potentially trying to budget for commission of a new public art piece. And so that's what I was bringing to the group today, is just kind of start that discussion, get some ideas. I think this would be budgeted for separately, is my understanding. And it sounds like it could be anywhere on the city civic campus, is what folks were initially thinking. It sounds like ideally outside, so that it would be accessible all hours, even when the businesses are closed. So there were some questions about cost, what something like that should be commissioned for. And again, I don't know if there's any thought yet on whether or not that would be a sculpture or a new mural, perhaps. We haven't gotten there yet, it doesn't sound like, but just throwing that out for discussion.
Is it open to maybe redoing the Peace Plaza? Would that be?
That's a great question. I had asked about the fountain, and I was suggested that we first learn more what that's going to cost. Apparently there might be some grant or other options for the fountain itself. But I didn't ask about, we mentioned earlier, we have that other mural that we were interested in looking closer at what we were going to do moving forward. So I think we could, make a couple of different propositions, things that we were interested in.
I think it would be good if we could schedule a separate meeting for literally a walk around that full block. So starting with the street across from the convention center and then going up to the block south of the library parking garage and literally getting out on foot and walking around to see what might make sense. I mean, there is some conversation about putting or nominating the Civic Center for the National Register of Historic Places. To me, that does not point in the direction of a mural on the existing structure. That seems like it would be incompatible. But there is green space and underutilized space on that greater parcel that we could look at. I like the idea of turning the fountain back on. That would be a gesture, like you could read all kinds of positive things into bringing water back to that desolate space. But I think it would be good to just like meet up at the right day and time and walk around.
Sounds good.
Maybe before it rains. That could be months from now.
Okay, well, I'd be happy to try to set something up and see if staff from city manager's office would be willing and joining.
I think that's great.
Okay. Any
And
thoughts?
are there any city councilors who are involved in this, or is it mostly coming from the city manager at this point?
I think it's just the city manager's office and some folks from the library that have been involved, in Kimberly, historian. But I imagine it will grow in scope if we continue to move forward. So
Great. I think it's a great idea. All
so
right.
just confirming, we wouldn't have probably any thoughts on like a ballpark cost or anything that I could pass along for maybe a sculpture piece or something.
Well, what did we spend on? So you can, I think, give a history of Good Sense, which is pretty contained in scale, was a $30,000 project.
Okay.
The Equitas at the police station was a different, but greater cost. The appraised value of both the piece in the Peace Plaza, the Hanson piece in the Peace Plaza, we've got that. I believe the Tom McCall sculpture at Waterfront Park is appraised value is $250,000. I think the Hanson is also valued at close to that. So, $20,000 would not get you a big piece. That's why I think being creative and looking at the whole campus would be just useful.
Sure.
Was that sculpture water, was it contained? Was the water feature contained, or was it like, it wasn't like one of those, like a kid could go run and play in it, right?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
well,
That,
there are photographs.
It was very
yeah,
nice.
that would
There are
be on the
photographs
docket. So I was just
of
thinking,
kids frolicking in that pool, and then it drained into the center.
yeah, so having that be functional, that would be awesome. And then makes me think of, yeah, what other things around it would help. I don't know, like benches or other, like, yeah, art's great too, but there might be other opportunities to kind of ante up on making it usable or drawing more people's attention to that it's functioning and that it's a destination too, you know, in warmer months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yes.
I never saw any pictures of it actually functioning to see what it, because, you know, the ones like the Pearl District, the ones that are there, they are so heavily used.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost ridiculous how many people, and then the one in front of the Capitol gets used quite a bit too.
Right. Right.
So it just seems like that would be a really great thing to bring back, you know, outside of some more art.
I agree. And, you know, something else that could be a more reasonable budget would be a light projection. There are some artists in Portland who've been doing projected works that are shown on some of the bridges. And then they moved some of they did some work outside the Portland Art Museum. And so if there was going to be, you know, let's just say a weekend celebration, something like that could be projected on those buildings or adjacent and, you know, documented for posterity, but then it wouldn't be a brick and mortar expense. So just another idea. I mean, I think it'd be fun to have a conversation with people. I mean, maybe it's time for a parade.
Well, so sorry, I'm kind of hung up on the fountain thing. So what details have been made around what's broken? Has it been assessed as to what the general cost would be? Because, you know, someone might say it's not a reasonable, you know, given what the number might be. Has anyone heard of?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what we were waiting on because it's so accessible to kids and whatnot. You need to make sure that the water is chlorinated is part of it. And I'm not sure what all is wrong with the plumbing, to be honest. So there was some nervous talk about how potentially high it could be, the cost estimate. And I just have not heard back on that. And I know Aaron was part of those discussions. He was out for a bit, so I was gonna reach back out to him this week, but I've been anxious to hear what that estimate is, because I think they were working on that.
Great.
Okay. Sounds like we might have wrapped up that item. Next on the list are the two works proposed for loan to the Bush House Museum. And Eileen, do you want to kick this off?
Sure. Ross at Sutherland approached us a good year plus ago, before we were starting to think in terms of returning work to the library, and asked us to consider loaning the Anthony Ewer pastel, which was a gift from a subgroup from the Salem Art Association to the barn, to the Bush House. And so he was going to be using that for a historical reference to kind of place. It was a 1920s piece, and he wanted to have that to as a history of Salem Art Association. And while we were doing the work, and there's another piece, Frederick Ballard Williams has an oil painting, which is a little bit newer, it's 1940s, which also is a landscape and of that same feel as the Ewer piece. And Ross is open to having that on loan as well. So all that we have to do at this point is decide whether or not we are willing to do that. We did keep those pieces out because first they did not quite fit with the new updated library. And also because we knew that this was an option. Oh, thank you. That's great.
I think one question that came up when we maybe just when Ross refreshed our memory about his request was whether these would be displayed or whether they would just be on site as a reference used as needed for some of their interpretive, educational programs. Do we know the answer to that?
The little bit that we've had a discussion with Ross about it, he was talking about actually having them on display.
Great.
Or at least the ewer. As when we were talking about that before, it was just the ewer, but we can find that out.
Sure. Reactions from commissioners? I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense to be there, and then if they're not going to be on view at the library.
I had another question, and I really don't know the answer to this. Does the city own the contents of the house? I know the city owns the house, and this house is sited on what is now City Park, but does the city own that collection? Anybody know? I don't. I just don't know. It seems like a very practical, collegial step to make to help a fellow cultural entity in Salem whose purpose is more inclined towards history and which has a venue that is an appropriate setting for showing these works.
Yeah, it goes very well with the Bush House.
Mhm.
The main thing is how long we would do the loan for. I know that there was some discussion about actually deeding it over to the house, Bush House. Personally, I think that we should start with loaning it to them.
Mhm.
And then, maybe for a 2-year period or something like that, and then revisit it at that point to see if that's something. They're good pieces, they're valuable pieces, and they are of an era that predates an awful lot of the work in the collection right now. And it's nice to have that little extra history available to the city of Salem as well.
Well, that's why I wondered who owns the collection, because if it's the city, then it's one part of the city loaning another part of the city an asset. I do like the idea of just the loan to start, and then there can also always be some permanent change of hands. But if this work of art ultimately belongs to the city of Salem, and gifting it doesn't make a whole lot of, then a long-term loan makes more sense to me. But what do others think?
Makes
Oh,
sense.
I agree.
Set the terms. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer to me. I mean, what would be, what number of years comes to mind? Is it like a 5-year thing, or what is it?
What do you think, Eileen, about length?
I was thinking in terms of 2 years, because that would give us enough sense whether or not we wanted to keep those pieces or whether we would eventually want to deed them over to Bush House. We should know that within 2 years.
Do you have to have an assigned value do we have an assigned value to them?
Yeah. Oh,
I don't know.
do
Have
we?
they been-
They should be part of that appraisal.
Yeah, to look.
And Heather, there was some questions that you had about the pieces themselves. We hadn't had a chance to talk about it. What What were those questions?
Yeah, thank you. I apologize. I did have this on the agenda initially, and then I ended up pulling. I know we were talking at one point about the possibility of gifting, and so I just thought I should look back at the history of these pieces a bit more. And I took a quick peek. We all know that my filing system needs improvement, and I wasn't seeing much. So that's why I went ahead and pulled, because I thought we were still having the gift discussion. I think we could move forward. Obviously, we've done a loan agreement pretty recently for the set seal that we did with the Willamette University. So hopefully I could move forward quickly with a simple loan agreement. And that makes sense. Yes, I just don't have any background on the piece other than a reference in my tracking spreadsheet that calls it a heritage piece initially placed in the Salem's Carnegie Library that was down on Winter, I think it was. So I just wanted to make sure if there was available any kind of donation letter or any of that, I just wanted to have that in place, primarily if we were thinking of gifting, but.
Actually, that's a really good question, Heather, because we have had problems with not knowing the background of the pieces as to who donated them and when it was donated, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find anything on that, and I did not find anything on that while I was doing the research on those pieces.
Okay.
And actually, as far as our own collection, the city's collection, there's a lot that we need to clean up on those.
Yeah.
As we said before.
Maybe Rachel has access to that newspaper, historical newspaper thing. Maybe we could start there. If this piece was hanging in a Carnegie Library in Salem, that was a long time ago, because that building was moved. That building is now on the Willamette campus. So, yeah, well, it's an interesting historical thing. Is there anything on the back of the work that would be revealing?
I don't know. I didn't really look to see.
I know, I mean, well, maybe for purposes of today, it's a work in progress. There does not seem to be any opposition to a loan. We might need to look into the provenance of the work, but I think if, we should probably, indicate to Ross that it's looking good, but we'll fine tune an agreement and get back to him.
And Ross is not in any hurry because Bush House is not open either.
Right, right.
So we've got time to do this.
Okay.
Also, I mean, to answer the question about whether the city owns the collection or not, now, Bush House Museum, is it separate 501c3, and so that would be easy to figure out if they've put their collection on their balance sheet. I don't know if they have, but you could just look at their 990 to figure that out.
Are you pulling up their 990?
No, I was
okay.
just saying, like, that would be a way to find out who owns it. Who owns the collection?
Right.
And we're talking about Bush House versus SAA because they're now separate entities.
Yes, they are separate entities, but on paper, Sandra is the incorporator of the Bush House Museum. Nonprofit. I did check that recently.
Yeah, but she's no longer there either, so.
All right, so do you have enough, Heather, so that you can do some follow-up before we make a decision?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect. That loan made me go back to the question about, and I know we're running out of time, the Guardians of Youth sculpture and whether that should be accessioned into the city's collection. I suggest we take that up maybe next month in the interest of time. I still remain very interested in how I know how that piece came to be a gift, but how it got to Bush Park in kind of an obscure locations, that remains kind of just a mystery for me. And then obviously someone will have to figure out what it will cost for someone to come look at the staining on the work. And that brings us to commissioner comments.
I
Any-
have a comment.
Please.
Okay, I have talked with Heather and Chris about this, but I need to let everybody else know too. I'm stepping down from the commission at the end of October. And I very much liked working with everybody, but I have not had a lot of time myself to be in the studio and to be with family. And so I'm looking forward to that. So,
Well, you've done, if nothing else, which is not true, the work that you did to assess the library collection, yes, with Paula and with Rachel and with others, but your leadership on that has been extraordinary. The collection looks like it has never looked before.
Yeah.
Spectacular. So I hope that we will be able to, I hope that we'll be able to organize a session with you on CC Media so that we get your real thoughts in real time about that process. And then I hope we can have an in-person celebration to thank you when we do our walk around the city center complex.
thanks, Chris. Thank you. I'm not very good at talking, by the way, as far as. So I'm not sure the CCTV is going to be a good thing, but I'll be willing to do whatever you need for that.
Wendy she's a good interviewer, and I know she made me feel very comfortable. She is a big art supporter and super friendly. But as we've been through, where did this work come from? How did this happen? Who was this a gift? And the more I think we can document our processes and have a good public record, particularly, if there really is going to be a 50-year celebration next summer, having the history as best as we know it and can tell it, we're bringing value to the city and the people of Salem. So that's where I'm coming from on all this. Let's get a picture. Let's get it on tape.
Absolutely. And I would like to make another plug for following up on what Rachel suggested as far as reorganizing how it is presented on the website.
Yeah.
And buying the program that would allow us to record all of this in one place.
I know someone in my neighborhood association circulated a message. The city had a public comment period open regarding the city's website. And his particular interest was getting the library section more robust. But I took his kind of heads up and I said, I think the public arts section should be more robust as well. Maybe with some Q&As and more links to particular images. And I haven't heard the outcome of that process, but I did weigh in just on the public user side that they might think about some improvements there. But I agree with you.
I've been in talks with folks from our IT department and GIS staff. There's been a push. We already have a lot of the data, not all of the artworks in GIS for kind of the mapping, the tour function. And there was interest in going ahead and pulling everything into that so that it can continue to display. They've not been able to answer questions yet about the documentation that we so dearly need to be able to tie to it easily. Without duplicating efforts and having to link and losing links. So we're still there was an email this morning about that conversation. So we're still looking at that. I know it's a need, it's a huge need for everybody.
Before I go, if it's convenient, if there's somebody that I could work with on the city to do the reading and clean up, then that was interesting, Rachel. Just clean up all the misspellings and, for instance, poor Thomas Capuccio, he's down there as Thomas Cappuccino. And for us, that's not a good look.
That's
when-
unacceptable. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's autocorrect for you.
Yeah, but you see, those are things that would be an easy fix, and we could at least get it to a point where it was more reflective of what it should be.
Sure.
And that wouldn't, I don't think that would take too long to do that if there was somebody to walk through it with.
Well, I think that's me right now. GIS is loading pieces into their GIS system, but the edits fall back to me. And I've known that you've made a ton of corrections in the labels. So I've been kind of waiting. We're through the library project, I think, mostly now, and I hope to kind of shift gears. I think our labels are all up to date and accurate at this point. So I was relying on that completed set and then some conversation with you, Eileen, to sit down and just mark out some time and at least make those corrections.
Sure, that would be great. That would be a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eileen, for your time. It's been
Kidding.
cool having you on the team here. Let us know if you have any candidates for replacement, because I know you know a lot of people in town who might be interested. So
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I have been thinking about it, and I'm having trouble because I know there's, a lot of people have limited time, and so they'd be great people, but I'm not sure that they have the time to do that.
Mhm.
I know one candidate who did sit in on a recent SPAC meeting. I don't want to mention his name on the public record, but he is quite interested. He has an arts business. He also happens to be an attorney. He's grew up in Salem and is moving back to town and is interested. I had coffee with him. He served on a public art commission briefly in another town in the Portland area. So I think we should, and he would bring representation from a ward that is not represented. But I do think we should look at Northeast Salem. I know City Commissioner Jackie Young, I think that's how her name is pronounced, might be a person to go to for ideas. And I think we want to bring the full range of arts experiences in Salem to this table.
Mhm. I'd also add that we talked about this last summer, I think toward the end of the summer, about possibly adding 2 positions to the commission so that we could have another person or have 2 more at-large positions that don't require a specific arts background. So right now, most of the positions require gallery, museum, or arts affiliated, arts adjacent type background. While that's important, I think there are a lot of people who would contribute significantly to the commission, but perhaps don't have those types of institutional type background. So anyhow, I'm throwing that out there again. I think we should do what's possible to enlarge the number of people who are part of the group.
And let's definitely bring that back up in October. There could be, yeah, I mean, other people have suggested adding a student. I'm not sure I'm not sure I feel that that's a big priority at this point, but I do know that we need to pick up the conversation about murals again, and that could have code implications, and as would a change of membership, and anytime you can bundle some of that stuff, it would be good. One of the things we didn't mention when Heather and I talked about the Echo Earth Ball was that Hazel Patton, who's part of the Salem Main Street nonprofit, attended the Salem Parks Foundation meeting that we were at. And she mentioned that they are using their nonprofit as the fundraising vessel for a mural to be developed on the Rivers condominium. So it sounds like there is at least active conversation coming there, which could get us to think more actively about the mural stuff. So that's just a report. And then on that same front, I think I circulated some images of some street painting that I saw in the Portland area recently, way out of the center of Portland, out in South Tabor, kind of in a regular, pretty culturally diverse neighborhood. And it was just a kind of a round painting in an intersection. And I understand from my daughter who lives in the neighborhood that lots of people were involved. She wasn't sure how it happened, but it was recent, and it's something that kind of grew up from the grassroots. But that just suggested to me that if the city were to get behind something like that, it would be a less complicated process than a mural that required an easement and the involvement of a property owner, and could be a way of community building in areas outside of, the core of downtown or the capital. And then I think I didn't share this one, but the city of New York has a program that activates intersections and neighborhoods using street painting around construction sites. And artists are commissioned. Some of them paint construction barriers, those concrete bollards. Some do painting in the street, but in the same vein, these are things that are not necessarily permanent. They don't involve a building. They're bright. You can't miss them. And a variety of artists have taken a different look at, some of the spaces. They're very fun. Anyway. What about other comments?
I did wanted to bring it. Was there any more discussion around the convention center pieces to do anything? I know since COVID's kind of.
Yes. So I was at the last Oregon Artist Series Foundation meeting, which we actually held face-to-face in the convention center, distanced. And there is definitely conversation about an event on October 28th. It would be like a 5 to 7, and that would be multiple focused. So folks being able to see the reinstalled works of art, including the new Richard Thompson and the new Rob Bibler pieces. And then OASF is taking over a wall on the second floor for temporary displays, much like the wall in the library. And the first show is going to be new work by Kristen Coons, who is a West Salem artist who actually has work in the library collection. Now, that all happened before the governor issued her last, the mask mandate, and before the announcements of the COVID spikes. So there is another OASF meeting next week, and I haven't heard what's going on at the convention center, but they were booking, they were booking events because they've had no revenue for a long time. But hold the date. I'm just kind of behind on things. I meant to get a message out. October 28th, I think it might be a Thursday. And it was just going to be I will say the convention center, it looks really good. I know they're getting some new carpet. They were getting that installed, and they were having some other repair. They were taking advantage of the downtime to just do some maintenance. The Thompson painting looks fabulous. The reinstall looks really good. They swapped out some paintings with Hallie Ford at Willamette. That looks good. And yeah, and then the banners outside are all faded. That is gonna, those will get replaced. But it's been a long year and a half at the convention center.
But just to be
Thanks for that
clear-
update.
Sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No, I was just thanking her. Yeah, just keep us posted. It sounds like it might be delayed, but the 28th, I'll just make a note of that.
Okay,
Just to be clear, Chris, SPAC does not own, or the city of Salem does not own the Bibler or the Thompson. Is that correct?
no, I think the city of Salem, okay, so the city of Salem, and I find this kind of complicated. The city of Salem has an urban, and please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, Heather. The city of Salem has a separate urban renewal agency. And the urban renewal agency is the entity that developed the Salem Convention Center, which did not generate any percent for art because it was prior to the time of the city having a 0.5% for art ordinance. So, and that led to the development of the Oregon Artist Series Foundation, which sponsored a number of mayor's annuals. Works from those shows some works from those shows are part of the collection of the convention center. And then OASF has purchased some work. There have been some gifts. And then for the first time, when there was a kitchen improvement project, which generated public art funds, that is how the Thompson piece was purchased. So $9,000 of 0.5% money, plus some added money from OASF, resulted in the purchase of the Richard Thompson. So when we talked about this at OASF, Chrissy at the convention center, she said, well, ultimately, those pieces belong here because they were either gifted to the convention center or purchased. But if everything were to be dissolved, all of those assets belong to the city of Salem because the convention center is a city of Salem entity. So again, it's kind of like, I don't know whether you could compare it to the library, but for sure, the Thompson was purchased by city funds. But at the parent of it is this urban renewal agency. And legally, I don't know how that is constituted separate from city government, and Heather might. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I've never dove into that topic. They are considered a separate entity from the city.
Yeah.
But there is various connections that I don't know the details.
Right. Yeah, but and actually the relabeling of the works at the convention center still needs to happen. So I will follow up with that because that needs to be clarified on that label.
Yeah, this is a time to clarify all this stuff because, 20 years from now, when the next generation are running SPAC, they won't have any clue.
I couldn't agree with you more. That's why I'm all about documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other question I had, the site, the exhibition site that the convention center has now, how is that being handled as far as the artists in the community?
That is still a question. Essentially, I think the idea for a space for showing rotating work grew out of a conversation about the ground floor of the convention center actually being full of art. So every wall has work. It's carefully selected. I think it really does look good. And people said, well, what if we thought about something that would give more opportunity to different artists in the community? And I'm not part of the kind of the core subcommittee that's driving this, although I ask a lot of questions. Kristen Coons was selected because of her longtime association, in her involvement in the arts community. And there was an interest also in selecting an artist who had enough of a reputation so that if a new space on the second floor of a building with no street presence was going to be an art gallery, what could we put in there that would get people to show up where they're for a launch type of event? And that's how she was really selected. But we also have talked about coming up with a running list of people who are Salem based, their work reflects Salem, they've got some longevity in the community, or maybe there is an opportunity for a show with a theme that relates to something that would be relevant in a convention center, which is not an art gallery per se. Could be tourism related, could be agriculture related. Other people are very interested in creating opportunities. It could be with sort of a mentor-mentee, established artist with an emerging artist. But I would say, to your point, there's no final direction set yet. And I keep suggesting that in this downtime for all of us, that some of this planning and some of these conversations could be being had now to lay the groundwork for the future, but that it's just not happening yet.
Well, just a thought to keep in mind is that the library also is kind of going through that as well, trying to figure out how they're going to run their corridor there. And it would be nice to dovetail with that.
Absolutely.
So with the people who are running the convention center one, the artists in Salem would be very happy to have different possibilities, so that they're not pulling from each other but actually augmenting each other.
I agree completely. And I know that there are at least a few people. I know Mary Wojcik had a walkthrough of the library with Gina, Johnny, and Kate. And, she, I think, would be interested figuring out who is going to fund these things. That remains, a question. Like OASF they extended the invitation to Kristen. And the idea was that the agreement is that she will bring her work there ready to hang. The work can be for sale. No commission will be taken, but the responsibility of the artist to prepare the work fully for the show, and OASF will install it, or convention center staff, which they're experienced, they'll help install it. And then the library, I think that is also unfunded. So figuring it out and maybe it's time for a group conversation so that there's transparency. OASF has talked about maybe 3 shows a year. Could be 4. I mean, it's been very hard to plan also with the building being closed, and OASF has been waiting for the lights, which have now been on order for 6 months. I just had an email this morning from the Cherry City Electric. It's like, oh yeah, we're waiting, for parts to come from China. It's unbelievable. So, but yeah, I think it would be good. I think it'd be good to have just a roundtable conversation about what's possible in both spaces. I know there was quite a list of artists from the area that started the conversation that led to the Richard Thompson acquisition. And so, bringing that list back. And I will say, because this really would apply to you, when we had the conversation about the artists for the convention center, because there is so much light on the ground floor, we did not look at artists who do work on paper, because it's too bright at all times of the day. And that would not apply to both the upstairs gallery space in the convention center, and it would not apply to the library space, which then opens up the opportunity to a much broader pool of artists. So I think to me, there's value added in both locations. And I would hope that both locations would also actively engage with the First Friday in Salem. And certainly the convention center, you know, they have someone who blogs for them. They've got PR staff. They love the arts, you know, and they see this as just another way of enhancing the user experience for their clients. So
Would art be on sale at those,
definitely at the convention center.
the parts that the gallery portion or the new wall you talked about?
At the library?
Oh, so sorry, at the convention center.
Yes, if the artist wants the work to be for sale, it can be for sale, and there will be no commission. And I think that there'll either be a QR code or there'll be a direct connection to the staff at the convention center. So if someone's there for an evening dinner and they want to buy a painting, someone will connect with them and they can make a purchase.
Great.
Yeah, I just hope it'll ever open. Like the guy from Cherry City Electric, when they said we're trying to do something on the 28th, he was kind of like, well, we're waiting. It's unbelievable. All right, is there anything else for the good of the order that we should mention? Actually, one last thing, because I could see it from afar, but it was only through the fence. The tribute panel that Michael did at the Rotary Amphitheater is installed, and I hope when we're all out and about, we get a chance to get close to that and take a look.
You still don't let people in that area yet, right?
No, it was all fenced and locked yesterday.
Yeah, they're trying to get that grass to take really good, I think.
The grass looked good. It looked very healthy to me. So.
I was also just going to mention that for those who are interested, there's a new show opening at the Halley Ford at the end of the month. I think it opens on the 25th. It's called Time and Place, and it's drawn fully from the collection of the museum. And this is, I think, the first time that they've had a temporary show that's entirely from the museum's collection. And there are some really great pieces in the show that have never been exhibited before. There's a Carl Hall painting that was a mural in a house on Fairmont Hill. And it's the largest known piece of his. And so that's going to be in the show. There's a lot of other work as well from Joe Feddersen, James Lavador, Michael Brophy. I'm just trying to think of people off the top of my head. Carl Hall. There's some local, April Waters. So anyhow, check it out.
And curated by Jonathan Bucci.
Yes, that too.
Who's that? I'm kidding. Jonathan who?
Right. Our helper. Anyhow, he is pretty excited about it because it's been fun to go through the collection and select the pieces for this show. And the theme is referencing different areas of the state and how those areas have changed over time and how artists' interpretations of those areas. So the show is divided into sections. So like the Oregon coast, the high desert, the Columbia Gorge, the Willamette Valley. So it's an interesting look at how artists have represented areas throughout Oregon over time.
Cool.
I can't wait to see the Carl Hall mural because I did see it installed in its original setting.
Oh, okay.
In a doctor's house on LaFell Street. And when the family that lives there currently did some needed remodeling, they had to remove the mural. And then it was at that point that it was gifted to the Halley Ford. and then it has been conserved. So
Mhm.
I'll tell you, it was drop dead gorgeous. It was so long ago, I didn't have a cell phone to take a picture, but it's going to I'm really looking forward to the show. I got my show card from the museum yesterday.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the person, somebody who lived in the house as a child when the mural was commissioned, she contacted the museum about something else altogether. And then Jonathan recognized her name and said, did you live in this house? And da da da. Anyhow, she lives in Portland, and she remembers Carl there, or maybe I think she remembers seeing it as a child, and then her older brother was around when he actually painted it. So that's kind of a cool thing too.
Yeah, amazing. All right, is there any further business to come before us? Hearing none, I am going to call the meeting adjourned at 11:49 a.m. Thank you all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Adrian.